オタック
Priest says, to obtain bread, one offers coin. To obtain rights, one offers taxes. To obtain wages, one offers labor. So then, what must one offer up to obtain the truth of our world?
Got it. What was your answer to that question?
I don't have an answer for this.
Oh, really?
Do you?
Yes.
What is it? Welcome back to 2AM OTTACK. I'm your host Mayu, a born and raised Japanese non-otaku, and
I'm Cisco, your co-host and American otaku.
In this podcast, we share our reviews of anime and manga through our distinct perspectives with commentary on Japanese culture, history, and language. Cisco,
Yep.
we are finally talking about the last episode of Orb on the movements of the Earth. Are you ready to talk about it?
Yep, I'm ready.
So today we are going to dive into the last episode of Orb. We will discuss some details in the last episode and also what we think about the meaning of the grown-up version of Rafal. We are explaining all about the opening theme song, Kaiju, and its brand new music video. And finally, today's word of the day. Before we start, please subscribe and follow 2AM OTTACK on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, YouTube, and YouTube Music. Also send us some comments about today's episode on Spotify or YouTube. All right, let's talk about the last episode of Orb. The title is ?
Yeah.
So Rafal has been back, and I thought it was nice to see him. I mean, it's definitely confusing. Like, why is he there? And he looks grown up.
Did he not really die?
Yeah, it's nice to see that, like,
familiar face.
Yeah.
Or so you thought.
I know. And you guessed about the last episode wrong this time.
What did I say?
You said nobody would die.
Yeah. Turns out that was an optimistic prediction for this show.
Still somebody dies.
Albert lived, though.
Albert lived, yeah, which is important.
Yep.
In this episode, Rafal invited Albert for the special gathering.
When Albert was a kid.
Right. This is like about his flashback.
Right.
So during Albert was like, fascinated by all the conversation around him, but he noticed he had to go home and then
take his measurements of the planets, his observations.
So he went back, and what he found was shocking.
Yes.
And Rafal started like calmly explaining, you're here, like, let me explain.
Yeah,
it makes
sorry,
sense.
I just murdered your dad.
Very like chill he was. What did you think about the scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think it felt a little forced to me. Like, I didn't really understand why Rafal had to murder him, even from Rafal's explanation. It was kind of like I get it. He was like, oh, he's hogging knowledge. He won't share his information, And Rafal's position is sort of that knowledge is more important than human life. And you see that really in the child Rafal's decision to poison himself rather than give up his sort of pursuit and ideals of truth, and particularly because he knows that if he doesn't kill himself, he'll be tortured until he reveals the location of the stone box with all of his knowledge in it. And so he's like, I'd rather kill myself than let that fall into the wrong hands, essentially. And so here we're seeing the flip side of that coin, that Rafal is okay with murdering people for knowledge too, because the pursuit of knowledge is so much more important than human life. So I get that. I think that's what the show is trying to say, right? Is that if you have these kind of ideals about knowledge being more important than life, then it can lead you to some like really twisted places. But it still felt forced. It was kind of like, I'm pretty sure you could have come to a resolution with this guy that did not involve stabbing him like directly in the heart, And so it felt kind of out of nowhere, but the whole situation with it being Rafal also felt so out of nowhere that I was inclined to just kind of go with it. I mean, I did a decent amount of reading on Reddit, so I'm like combining lots of different people's theories here, but I think it makes sense to me that Albert as a child is not necessarily the world's most reliable narrator. Like he's remembering things from when he was a kid, but that doesn't mean he remembers it perfectly the way it happened. And so you can make some allowances for the weirdness of the situation by being like, maybe this is what child Albert understood about what was going on. And for what the author is trying to say about sort of extremism or blind devotion to ideology or being so sure you're right that you're willing to kill other people over it. I think even though it feels a little bit, again, forced, I think it makes sense as a thing the author is trying to say.
Okay. And Albert talked all about his childhood, about Rafal teacher and his dad to the priest.
Right.
And the priest was like, okay, it's my turn to tell you some secret. And he started opening his mouth saying, I left a friend for dead.
Right.
I was like, who's this guy?
Right. Right. Yeah. Immediately it's like, wait, is this a character we've seen before?
Right. And he started saying he committed a really bad, crime and didn't do anything about it. Yeah. And it's like, oh.
This sounds familiar.
So I thought this gotta be the priest that worked for Novak.
Right, the other inquisitor.
Yeah, there are two young inquisitor worked for Novak, and one of them decided to let Yolenta go.
Right.
While, they were questioning her.
Right.
And then Yolenta ran away, but one of the inquisitor got caught and then
beat up.
Beat up. Yeah, he got beat up, and then he was trying to say love your enemy or. Right.
Yeah. So he refuses to participate in torturing Yolenta because he doesn't think she's guilty. Oh. And the other inquisitor, the blonde one, is sort of like, hey, man, we have our orders. We have to do what they say. And so he sort of seems down to do it. Right. But then the brown haired guy lets her get away. And so after beating him up and finding out that he let her escape, Antony realizes he needs a body to prove to Novak that Yolenta's really dead. And so there's a very chilling moment where he says, where the guy's like, well, where are we going to get a body? And he's like, there's one right in front of you. Right. And so I think the blonde, it's not totally clear because they don't show all of the steps that take place or who's around when things happen. But it's sort of implied that the blonde priest could have spoken up or tried to help the brown haired priest escape, or at least maybe not get burned alive. And he didn't, partly because maybe he thought the other guy was in the wrong for having let Yolenta go. Right. But it also really seems like he's just afraid of Antony and the other inquisitors, and that he goes along with the thing he knows is kind of wrong because he's not brave enough to stand up to it. The brown-haired priest, as he's on the ground, when they're sort of like, why'd you let her go? He's like, love thy enemy, which is one of Jesus's better known sayings. And Antony is like, oh yeah. So of course you've been tricked by it. Kind of classic, Yeah,
he was saying that's how people, mistakenly understand the phrase or
that's
something.
Not what it really means. Yeah. It's that's exactly what it means. I think that is kind of a nice moment of showing why the Protestant Reformation was popular, right? Is there's some parts of the Bible that actually aren't that hard to understand. And when you hear a priest who supposedly has done a lot of research and understands the Bible really well, flatly contradicting the most obvious parts, it becomes really hard not to doubt the authority of the church. And so I think that's, I liked that scene quite a lot.
And during the conversation between Albert and the priest, towards the end of the conversation, priest says, to obtain bread, one offers coin. To obtain rights, one offers taxes. To obtain wages, one offers labor. So then, what must one offer up to obtain the truth of our world? Do you remember this?
Yes.
So this is already said at the very, very first episode of Beginning. It's the same phrase by same voice actor.
Oh, interesting.
That's how the story starts.
Oh, by the priest guy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The narrator.
Got it. What was your answer to that question?
I don't have an answer for this.
Oh, really?
Do you?
Yes.
What is it?
Certainty.
Certainty?
Yeah, which is hilarious, right? Because I'm like, certainty. It's definitely certainty. But there are so many things in the show that I think point to this as the answer that in order to get the truth, you have to give up your own sense of certainty about what it is in order to be able to like explore possibilities. And I think at a couple different like pivotal moments in the show, sort of like characters who seem to have obtained some wisdom offer advice to younger characters. And almost always the advice is like, stay hungry, keep questioning things, like don't assume that you know everything. We see that from Yolenta to Draka. We see that same message from this priest to Albert. I think we see that message basically from Hubert to Rafal in the very beginning. But this idea that like certainty is bad and questioning is good is also like what's at the core of aporia, and also is what's at the core of like getting towards knowledge and the scientific method, is that it's not about answers, it's about questions. So I'm not modeling that very well by being like, yeah, the answer of like, how do you get to the truth is you have to give up certainty. But I think that's especially the case with, you know, when we're thinking about the heliocentric model versus the church's earth-centric model, that, you know, if you took it on faith that the earth must be at the center of the universe because God would have put it there, then you can never really understand what's going on with the rest of the universe. And once you decenter that way of thinking by saying maybe like what makes it make sense mathematically, you can arrive at a better answer than you can from a place of a priori certainty about what the answer is going to be. But what do I know? You should ask your own questions about what the show is about.
So after the conversation, Albert decided to go to university, and then he signed up his name as Albert Brzezinski.
Brzezinski?
Brzezinski?
I think. I'm not actually very good at Polish pronunciation either, but I think it's probably Brzezinski.
And then at the end of the show, it explains who is this guy.
Right. He was a real person.
A real person who was basically the teacher for Copernicus.
Oh, he was one of Copernicus's teachers anyway, yeah, at the university. So it's implied that he had doubts about the geocentric model, although he wasn't very, he didn't like really contest it or develop his own model to replace it, but he voiced doubts that it was accurate. And the implication is that Copernicus as a student heard those doubts and started thinking and came up with his own questions and eventually his own heliocentric model, like again, from scratch. So yeah, we finally got some closure on Draka's message. Draka's message is in fact a letter to Potocki.
Yeah.
They're reading it out loud in front of Potocki's house, being like, hey, are you Potocki? He's like, hell no. And they're like, oh, this says like, you know, if there's any like money to be made from this book about how the earth isn't the center of the universe or the sun is the center of the universe, then it should go to you. And they're like, ha, that's preposterous. Like as Albert Brzezinski is walking by, and he's shown with just a question mark, right?
Right. He was like, the title of the book was like on the movement of the earth.
Right.
He was
they
like,
have the title.
What is that?
He's like, what's that about? And it makes him question.
When I watched the scene, I thought about the conversation between Priest and Albert when Priest was saying like when miracle happens, it necessarily.
Oh yeah, like it's either all miracles happen out of necessity, but they're by chance, and then inverts that sentence.
So maybe that's why.
Yeah, maybe.
So at the very first episode of Orb, it says early 15th century, somewhere in the kingdom of P. And then when Albert came in, it says it changed to 1468 Poland.
Right.
It became clear.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of this is that the first part of the story is fiction. The author's making it up. It didn't really happen. And so to establish the uncertainty around what is going on, he's not using specific dates, and he also isn't using specific place names to add to the sense of unreality or the possibility that something like this happened, but without like implying that it necessarily did. And then once we get Albert Brzezinski introduced as a character, because he's a real historical person, we get an actual historical date and an actual historical location. And so I think that's the reasoning behind sort of like lifting the veil and getting those more specific dates as opposed to the intentional, I think, unspecificity in the beginning.
I Googled about Albert, trying to see if he was a baker.
Oh, was he?
I couldn't find the answer. I kind of hoped he was a baker.
Yeah, I mean, he was young when he went to university. I think he was
Yeah,
like 20 or something. I don't know that we have any records of what he was doing before he went to university. Maybe he was a baker.
Maybe. Okay, the last question about the episode of Orb. What does the last episode of Orb mean? It was so confusing. I think you already kind of guessed. You kind of guessed it. And then to me, the guess make me understand better.
That the idea of Rafal's position being intentional to create aporia in the viewer. Yeah. So again, I went through some Reddit comments about this and saw a bunch of different potential things, some of which we sort of talked about, some of which I thought about and was rejected as not good answers. And I'm not the only person with that interpretation. Some of the other comments I saw had the same idea of what if this is on purpose to make the viewer feel aporia about it and sort of do what the author seems to be suggesting is the right way to live your life by asking questions and trying to make sense of phenomena that don't fit our mold of what we understand about the world. And so if that is in fact the intention, then I think it's a reasonable one. I saw a lot of people being on Reddit being they're in an alternate dimension or reality where Rafal actually didn't die or something. And I don't like that as an explanation. I understand where people with that interpretation are coming from, but I think it's kind of lame as an explanation, or it's just it's not satisfying to me as an explanation. And so I prefer the idea that either Albert's not a reliable narrator, he doesn't remember exactly what's going on, Rafal is something of not a figment of his imagination, because I'm sure his father really died, but is an ideal or a sort of memory rather than an actual person. And I definitely think Rafal as a metaphor for extremists makes a lot of sense. And so I think that sticking him back in there and making the viewer be wait, what? How could this be? How would this work? Induces a state of aporia where you don't have a good answer to those things. And then the viewer has to go and search for their own answers, which is a big part of what the message of the show is about. So Talmazane, yeah, experiencing Talmazane or aporia, and then Talmazane is wonder or awe of nature.
Yeah.
I don't think Rafal being alive again induces Talmazane specifically, but I do think it induces aporia, where you're wait, this question doesn't seem to have an answer. I need to approach it in another way, or I need to think more deeply about it in order to arrive at one. I do think it creates that feeling. Talmazane is there in the real world, but I don't think Rafal being alive again is, maybe in the sense of confusion, but not. I think aporia is a better word for what is being induced by Rafal being alive again.
After I hear your thoughts about it, those phrases, those things Rafal said to Albert right after he killed Albert's dad felt more real. What he said was, well, I understand how you feel. You must be confused. Even so, I'd like you to stay calm. If you deal with rationally, this too can be understood. I have faith in you.
Right.
It's as if author is telling us.
Always trying to challenge us to figure out what the hell is going on here. Yeah. I think it's also a critique of people who are so sure of their own actions that they can do things like murder others and be whatever, I'm right, you'll get it later. It's not a positive expression of that set of beliefs. I think it's a critique of that, to be this is a bad way to live your life, is so sure you're right that killing other people can be rationalized. And I think we see a lot of that in the modern day world, where people, we had to kill these people because reasons. And so I think that's actually I hear you on he's challenging the audience to be try and figure this out. Don't just panic and freak out and be bad show because Rafal's still alive, grr. But also I think it's a critique of that type of position of don't blame me. If you think about it rationally, killing people is the right thing to do.
All right. So let's move on to the theme song, Kaiju by Sakanaction. They made a music video in this very short period of time, which came out right after the last episode of Orb aired on NHK, I think. We saw the music video in live streaming. The main vocalist Ichiro Yamaguchi did an interview to the music video director later.
Nice.
Let me explain what he said.
Should we explain what's in the music video first?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Can you explain?
Sure. So the music video is really straightforward. The lead singer, who's the only member of the band who appears in the video because the others couldn't make it to the shoot.
Yes.
I mean, like, I get it. People have like busy lives and stuff going on, but like, how do you not go to your own band's music video shoot?
Yeah.
Okay, so that happened.
I think guitarist, I think one of the members was explaining his son passed like an entrance exam for high school or something, and then they decided to go to Disney Sea or something, and they go, good for him.
Yeah.
Taking family.
I mean, I guess it also feels like you could have rescheduled that trip and not done it.
It's not easy to get like tickets. Maybe they were staying in the hotel or.
I guess so. I don't know. That's a choice, man. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, they were on a tight schedule, so I get it. It didn't work. Anyway, the lead singer is the only guy who appears in the video. He's holding a giant egg, and he's in the subway. And it looks actually like an American subway. It looks like it's just one corridor that looks like it's maybe got like an I shape. And he passes through the same corridor over and over. It looks like he's looking for a way out of the subway, and he just can't find one. Every time he goes into a new corridor, it's the same as the last corridor. And as he passes through these corridors with this egg, he encounters various different people, all of whom try to take the egg from him in one way, or almost all of whom try to take the egg from him in one way or the other. He knocks into somebody. People threaten him. People try to bribe him. People try to seduce him to give the egg away. And each time he gets, holds on to the egg or recovers the egg and then runs into the next corridor. And eventually he meets a little girl who hands him a pen. And you're kind of like, what's he going to do with this pen? Is he going to write his name on the egg? Is he going to break the egg? And just sort of holds on to it. And at the very end, and actually at the very beginning too, he is being crushed in between two of the walls of the subway, which have tightened in on him. And he's struggling to get through. And in the ending, he is grabbed from behind by one of the characters who has been trying to get the egg from him. He stabs the guy in the hand with the pen. The guy lets him go, and he keeps trying to get through the walls. And ultimately, he manages to stick the egg in his hand out of the closing walls. It falls into the hands of someone else, like some other passerby. And then he's like crushed between the two walls permanently at the end. So it's pretty repetitive. There's not actually that many different types of scenery. And the story is extremely straightforward. He's got the egg. Other people want to take it away. He's trying to protect it. And then he gets crushed at the end.
Yeah, it's sort of easy to understand. It could be like Kaiju's egg, but also could be like belief or faith.
Could be something that's very important to him. Yeah.
Yeah. And the director said there are people who are trying to get rid of the egg with like money or seduction or what do you call the
hypnotism?
Hypnotism, like person means a little bit of like religion.
Sure.
Brainwashing, violence, and especially the violence guy kind of represents the image of dad, of like,
parents trying to make you give up your
dreams and belief with force. And then a little girl comes in who is not, affected, who's still pure and wants to believe in stuff.
Right.
Also representing the vocalist himself.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But she was taken away from her mom. Director was trying to show.
He wanted to show the version of the lead singer that's the hardest to show.
Yeah.
Or the hardest to look at.
Yeah. He was struggling. He was running away, trying to hold on to his belief. So that the whole thing is representing him and Orb, of course.
Right.
Especially towards the end. And there's a like sign says norm. Like with the point direction. So when he tried to go to the norm part, walls open up.
Oh,
but when he tries to go to the other way, like two walls try to push him and they try to crush him. So the walls means like pressure
from
society, especially in Japan.
Yeah,
I think Japan has the idea it's good to follow in the majority.
Right, or that it's better to obey the norms or fit in.
Yeah, so
conform.
Yeah, I think that was the explanation from the director.
I have to say, like when I watched it, I interpreted it a little bit differently than this. The lead singer struggled for a long time with depression. And I think one of the more interesting ways to read the music video, even if it wasn't the intention behind it, is as a metaphor for depression. That, he's got this egg, this maybe some hope or some authentic self or whatever you want to call it. He's trying to take care of it, but society keeps trying to squish it out of him. And no matter how he tries to escape, like everything looks the same and it doesn't really feel possible to get out of the situation he's stuck in. That to me feels like very descriptive of what it's like to battle depression and to feel like, you know, no matter where you go, everything's always the same. There's no real way out. You're trying to sort of take care of and protect yourself, but everything is against you. And no matter what you do, it doesn't seem to work.
I like the interpretation. I think this is Sakanaction's first song to the anime theme song.
Oh, nice. Wait, what about didn't you say they did one for Bakuman?
Bakuman, but for live action.
Shin Takarajimasu for the live action,
Yeah.
not the anime.
Yeah. Because Uoto, the manga artist, asked Sakanaction to make theme song for
Cool.
the orb. Yeah. And then that was just perfect.
Yeah, they nailed it.
And then, like, the reason why Sakanaction has never done anime theme song is partially because their music company, contributor, what do you say?
Producer? I don't know. Their label?
Their label is Victor. And Victor has no connection to anime.
Got it.
But like Sony owns Aniplex or something. They're related.
Isn't it Avex Tracks, or is that like, did they get bought out and don't exist anymore? For a really long time, like so much anime music was released through Avex Tracks because like, yeah, whoever was producing the anime also owned that and we're just trying to like rep their own artists on it.
Yeah. So Aniplex has like, you know, Demon Slayer.
Sure.
Or like more other like, you know, famous animes. So like often you hear kind of, you know, same singers or bands over and over.
Yeah.
Because they're hiring
their own
singer.
people. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Let's do word of the day.
Okay.
So today's word of the day is
Hatena mark.
Or Hatena.
Okay.
That's the title of the last episode of Orb.
Yeah.
It's called?
It's a question mark.
It's a question mark.
It's a question mark. So we were wondering, why is it Hatena mark? Like, why isn't it Shitsumon mark or some other word that corresponds to question in English? Okay, so seems that the reason that it's Hatena mark is there's an expression in Japanese, hatte, which means can be translated as like, so now let's see, or well then, or something else. But it's a phrase that indicates that you're thinking about something or like pondering it. And so I think the last time I heard this was in Ano-chan's opening theme song for Ranma Nibun no Ichi, where she's like, hatte in the middle. But it's used sometimes by people who are about to raise a question, right? To be like, so, you know, I imagine physics professors using this quite a lot to be like, oh, right, like an airplane has dropped like, you know, a skier out of its cargo bay and they're falling at a rate of whatever. And now they're going to land on the snow. How fast will they be going 12 seconds after they hit the mountain? And then it'd be like, hatte, like here we have gravity and here we have like the friction coefficient between the ski and the snow, blah, blah, blah. Like that. But it sets up a question, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know that I needed an example that long, but it sets up questions. And so in old Japanese, you would have said Hatena, right? As like a, I wonder, essentially. And so that's where the name of this mark comes from. And I think that state of being like hatte is sort of similar to aporia, right? Thinking about or trying to answer a question. And so that's why we chose that.
All right, thank you. Before we end the Orb episode, anything you'd like to say?
This was such a great anime. I'm so glad we got to do so many episodes about it. I think it really made me think a lot. And that's something that I really enjoy doing.
You do?
I love pondering possibilities and being in aporia. And I don't think I get to experience Tamazen as much as I would like to. Like, I think going out into nature and having those moments where you confront like the, you know, glorious complexity of the universe and really it makes you think about stuff are awesome. But I just loved how much this anime taught me, how much it made me think. And I hope that a lot of people get to see it and enjoy the bomb opening theme song and ending theme songs, as well as the sort of deep philosophical journey that it takes viewers on.
The only thing I want to say before we end is if Japanese anime companies or I don't know production decided to make Orb in live action, Hollywood should do it.
Yeah.
Specifically HBO.
Yes, strongly agree. Oh, I did remember what I wanted to say earlier. The last thing I wanted to say about this is it feels like a very timely show, especially the last episode's investigation of Rafal's willingness to kill people for his beliefs and the dangers of certainty as opposed to doubt and questioning, and the incredible importance of science to answer questions about our world. Those all feel like really important topics right now when we're living in an age where people develop enormous amounts of certainty about stuff they don't actually have any expertise in, just based on their own sort of opinions without actually asking questions or looking into things scientifically, and in an age where an enormous number of people are obeying and without questioning their own complicity in perpetuating like harm to others, whether that's killing people or, you know, whatever it may be, that this anime has a lot to say about people's responsibilities, even when you feel like a small cog in a wheel, or the importance of standing up to stuff you know is wrong. And so I'm glad it's out right now.
All right. Including this episode, I think we made 5 episodes about Orb. I kind of wished we, could have done it like every single episode of Orb. Then it'd be like 25.
It would have been too many, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be too many. I didn't think it was gonna be this great anime.
And there are parts of it that are kind of slow.
Yeah.
But overall it really paid off.
Yeah. So check those episodes out in the description. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you liked this week's episode, please give us good reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or like and leave a comment on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and follow 2AM OTTACK. It'll keep us making more fun episodes. See you next time for more 2AM OTTACK.